40 days into the pro-Palestinian encampment at the University of Toronto, and the administration says it's offering a fair proposal while protesters call the meetings and negotiations pathetic.
Fire destroys historic St. Anne's Anglican Church in Little Portugal. Coming up, clergy and parishioners share memories.
And Mississauga will have a new mayor tonight. It's a big night in that city. Polls close in less than 3 hours. Complete coverage continues tonight.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Bakari Savage.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thank you for joining us. Mississauga residents are choosing the city's next mayor today with less than 3 hours left until the polls close.
Right now, let's go live to CP24's Andrew Brennan, who's at a polling station. This is at Port Credit Memorial Arena. Andrew.
Yeah, Bakari, and just seeing a little bit of an uptick in terms of the number of people coming now, and I do want to stress a little part. This is a by-election. Historically, the number of people that come out for by-election votes versus, municipal elections every 4 years and provincial and especially federal politics, the numbers tend to be down in terms of voter turnout, but we are expecting at least a little bit more people coming for the not after dinner even, after work rush. And I have had a quick chance to talk to some people here. We've been at polling stations throughout the day and trying to get a sense of what people are looking for in Canada's 7th largest city. We don't often think about how big Mississauga is because, it's right beside Toronto, and people in Toronto guilty of this growing up in the city. We think of it almost as the center of the universe, but with over 700,000 people here, whether it's talking about property taxes, which is something that was big on the campaign trail, whether it's a question of transit and ensuring that there's links between Metrolinx and My Way here in Mississauga and the TTC. These have been some of the big things the candidates have been talking about, but as for people, there's a lot of little things, whether it's speed bumps, whether it's, having access to the waterfront, whether it's something a little bit bigger, like housing in a city with really high property taxes and increasingly unaffordable housing. How can all of this be solved by one person? Here's some of the things that people have been telling us throughout the day.
Definitely more affordable housing and more density. Obviously, not everyone wants there to be a massive amount of density everywhere, but right now, the city is kind of like a few pockets of massive towers and then just single-family homes everywhere else.
My issue with this area is they're going crazy with speed bumps and 30-kilometer-per-hour things. So every politician who sent a brochure saying they wanted more speed bumps, they were off my list.
What are your issues?
I don't have any. I'm happy with who I've got.
Unfortunately for that last man right there, there's nothing you can't maintain the status quo when the mayor has left and is now seeking a seat in the provincial legislature and also is just not going to be mayor anymore. This is going to be the 5th mayor in Mississauga's history going back over 5 decades. What do people want? We'll let people know throughout the night as we talk to more of them and, of course, have our special election coverage later on. I'll send it back to you both at the desk. I got some voters to talk to.
Okay.
All right.
CP24's Andrew Brennan. Right now, we're going to switch over to CP24's Melissa Duggan, who's at the Mississauga Convention Center. This is where Carolyn Parrish and her supporters are going to be watching the results come in.
Melissa.
Yeah, this is election night headquarters for Carolyn Parrish, a political veteran in this city, arguably the best known candidate as well. She served in federal politics as MP for 13 years. Then she switched things up, went municipal in 2006. Most recently serving as the Ward 5 councillor, but she exited that seat so she could focus primarily on this race for mayor. And her campaign has been a fascinating one to watch. She entered it as the very clear front runner, just head and shoulders ahead of her closest competitor. But then there was a bit of a turning point, some pointing to an early debate in the campaign. The fallout from that, critics calling some of her comments that she made transphobic, insulting against refugees. Parrish came out defending herself afterwards, saying that those comments were taken out of context. They were misrepresented. But still, she decided to pull out from future debates, telling CP24 instead she's going to be focusing on meeting and greeting people in the community. But definitely a headline that came out of her campaign where we saw her poll numbers really shrink after that point. One poll just putting her 1 point ahead of her closest competitor. Still, though, she's telling us she is optimistic. Have a listen.
I'm feeling very confident. No, our advanced poll stuff was good. Everything seems to be fitting out, fitting in the way we want it to. So I'm not too worried about it.
So Carolyn Parrish and her team hoping tonight here at the Mississauga Convention Center that there'll be a celebration happening. We're going to be bringing you live updates throughout the evening, though, as this room behind me starts to fill up eventually. Back to you.
Yeah, it could be a big party there tonight, or it may not. Melissa Duggan keeping a close eye on Carolyn Parrish headquarters. Thank you for that, Melissa. Now, we caught up with some of the other leading candidates in the race today about how they're feeling heading into this evening.
I woke up this morning and, it took me a second, of course, and go, oh my God, today's election day. So yes, lots of momentum, lots of energy. I'm feeling good. We've done our best. We've put our best foot forward, and now it's up to the voters.
It's really, really exciting. It's all going to be about turnout. The game plan is to knock on as many doors of all the supporters that we've had over the last several months who said that they believe in our vision and they want to come out and vote for us. It's all about turnout. It's all about the ground game. We've got hundreds of volunteers across the city of Mississauga, so we're so excited to get them to go out and pull people to come and vote.
We want to set our course, and this is our opportunity to do it right now. We're also hearing a lot about taxes being too high. I'm also the one that's proven when it comes to being a good fiscal manager. I'm the only one that's actually voted against a budget, and that was important because, quite frankly, we need to do better when it comes to how we're spending our tax dollars.
And former Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie cast her ballot this morning at Riverside Public School. Crombie held the city's top job for more than 9 years before stepping down to successfully run for the Ontario Liberal leadership.
My message today is to encourage everyone to get out and vote, because in municipal elections, the turnout is notoriously low. It was less than 22% in the last general election. So today the message is, please get out and vote, particularly young people. Maybe this is their first time voting. So we have a by-election in Mississauga. We're choosing a new mayor for the next 50 years of Mississauga. We've only had 4 mayors: Martin Dobkin, Ron Searle, Hazel McCallion for 36 years, myself for a decade. And so today you're choosing a mayor that will kick off the next 50 years of Mississauga's history.
And CP24 will have special coverage beginning at 8 o'clock tonight. That is when polls in Mississauga close. It could be an exciting night. Join us for the latest results and political reaction. We'll be all over it.
Right now it's 5:07, 16 degrees. Let's get a check on the rush hour commute with Adjoa Intia-Yabois. Adj, good evening.
Oh, good evening, Bakari. And it continues to be quite the crawl home, especially if you're a commuter on the eastbound 401. We have problems in the collectors at Dufferin. Ongoing multi-vehicle collision has the 2 right lanes of the collectors and the left lane of the exit ramp to Dufferin off limits again. It is really slow from Dixie at this point, more so in the collectors, obviously, than the express. Then on the westbound 401, just watched a problem clear, maybe not. It's on this camera. It's the westbound 401 on the approach to Yonge. Stalled truck is in the center lane of the express and really jammed on the 400 on the southbound side. Been searching my cameras, haven't spotted anything, but the ramps that take you to the westbound 401 things are very, very slow going. I'll send it back to you.
This CP24 traffic report is brought to you by 407 ETR. Enjoy the journey with a stress-free commute.
The man charged with killing a woman by lighting her on fire on a TTC bus. This happened 2 years ago. Is asking a court to find him not criminally responsible.
This is new information coming into our newsroom tonight. Tenzin Norbu pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder at the outset of his trial today. He admitted to setting the 28-year-old victim on fire aboard a bus at Kipling Station back in June of 2022. However, his lawyers say Norbu had schizophrenia and was not capable of fully understanding his actions because of a pre-existing psychotic state. A forensic psychiatrist testified Norbu had been experiencing hallucinations for a decade prior to the killing.
And a man was rescued from a ravine in Mississauga this morning. Chopper 24 caught the moment emergency crews were able to bring the man up to safety. Paramedics say that they received a call around 6:30 in the morning from a man who needed help at Riverwood Conservancy Park. He said that he was under the bridge near Burnham Thorpe and Mississauga Roads. His injuries appear to be serious.
And And Durham police are asking for help to find a Curtis woman, who's been missing for several weeks. 30-year-old Kimberly was last seen on May 16th near Carnwith Drive and Baldwin Street in Brooklyn. Police have not been able to locate her and say her previous social media posts have not been able to find her, but they do believe she might be in Oshawa. Kimberly is described as 5'6". She weighs about 110 pounds and has a thin build. She was last seen wearing a black T-shirt with the word champion on the front in white script, black tights and sandals. Police are concerned for her safety.
And police have released more details about the 6 pro-Palestinian protesters arrested near yesterday's Walk with Israel in the Bathurst and Shepherd area. They say that the 6 showed up at the event displaying anti-Semitic messaging and called for violence. They range in age from 22 to 75 years old, facing charges including assault, inciting hatred, obstructing a peace officer, a mission. It happened as tens of thousands of people participated in the walk to raise money for victims of terror and those struggling with mental illness and trauma.
5:10, 16 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. Coming up, organizers of a pro-Palestinian encampment have responded to the latest offer from the University of Toronto. We'll be right back.
Okay, continuing our coverage of a story that we've been following for quite a while, a new offer from the University of Toronto in hopes of ending a pro-Palestinian encampment, but protesters are flatly rejecting it, calling it unacceptable.
Yeah, CP24's Steve Ryan is following the latest developments from the school campus, and you have more on what both sides are saying tonight, Steve.
Yeah, Lena, the encampment has been set up since May the 2nd, and on the 25th of May, the special constables here at the University of Toronto served the demonstrators with a notice saying that they were trespassing. And now this whole ordeal is before the courts. The injunction hearing continues on June the 21st. So an offer was made today by the school to the demonstrators. But I spoke with some of the organizers here this afternoon, and they said their 3 demands are not negotiable, and they are that the school disclose its interests in Israel, that it divests in all Israeli companies, and that it cuts ties with Israeli universities. And the school has said, the U of T have said that they will not cut ties with Israeli universities, so it's a deal breaker. And this is why this encampment is still set up here today, and it will continue to be set up until such time, according to the demonstrators, until their 3 demands are met. Now, the U of T is in court. They have asked the court for authorization to have the demonstrators removed, and the police are standing by and waiting to see what the court says. The Toronto Police said last week that they will not act under the authority of the Trespass to Property Act. Under that act, there is an arrest authority, and that is if somebody who has lawful authority of a property asks somebody else to leave, and if that person refuses to leave, the police can remove them. But the police have said that they will not rely on that authority, and they're going to wait for the court to either give the order to have these demonstrators removed or not. In such case, the police will not act at all, and it'll be a civil matter that will go on between the university and the demonstrators. Here's a reaction that we got from earlier on here at the school. Let's listen.
The University of Toronto, is actively seeking a court order to allow them to call the police on their own students. How can they possibly be good faith negotiations when one party to the negotiations must deal with the constant threat of police violence? These are no way, shape, or form negotiations that are happening in good faith. These negotiations are severely power imbalanced.
The provincial court will continue hearing the arguments from both sides on June the 21st. So I'm back to the desk.
All right, Steve Ryan, live at the University of Toronto tonight, where there is no resolution in sight. Thank you for that, Steve. Meantime, an investigation continues into a fire that destroyed a historical Anglican church in Little Portugal. Just heartbreaking for that community. Yeah,
CP24's Beatrice Baseman joins us live now in studio with more on how the community is reacting to the loss. Beatrice.
Bakari and Lena, the community is just devastated. You'll hear from some of the heartbroken parishioners, people who live in that community in Little Portugal. Many people who got married there or had their children baptized there or shared any kind of celebrations there. It's those memories that are irreplaceable, as is the art that was on the dome of this historical church. Art by the group of 7, just things that money can't buy and that you can't replace no matter how hard you try. When you look at the destruction, it's just absolutely devastating. Toronto Police today saying that it is not treating this fire at St. Anne's Anglican Church as suspicious at this time, though certainly it's going to take a lot of work for investigators to get in there, to sift through some of the rubble, and to actually identify what caused this fire to ignite yesterday morning. It was a 4-alarm blaze that ripped through this National Historic Site, destroying these murals that were inside of it. This is something that, we've heard from the pastor who was here at CP24 this morning, talking about just the deep impact on the community, how he was supposed to be there to hold service yesterday morning. And then, of course, it simply wasn't to be. This is what it looked like when the fire was fully happening in the moment, where people were just standing there outside of it in awe. They couldn't believe what was taking place. And so when it comes to how the community is coping with this and what the plans are for rebuilding, here's more from one of the reverends, and you'll hear from some very emotional community members as well.
It was just 2 weeks ago I was ordained in the church, and it was a wonderful occasion with hundreds of people, and I had friends and family fly in from the US and UK. And so I'm so grateful for those memories, for the photos of that occasion. But, it's an emotional roller coaster. I didn't expect on that wonderful day that 2 weeks later I'd be standing here looking at the shell.
I was married here, and my children were all baptized and confirmed. I've been doing the history and art tours for years. I just can't believe it's all gone.
We live 10 minutes walk away, and I knew a lot of the priests and rectors who were in charge here, and it's a big loss.
This is a church built back in 1907, 1908. It was designated as a National Historic Site of this country back in 1996. And now Toronto Police, Toronto Fire, and the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office are all conducting parallel investigations to figure out how this happened. Lena and Bakari.
And again, that's St. Anne's Anglican in Little Portugal. CP24's Beatrice Vaisman. Thanks a lot. Well, it's 5:18, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5. And coming up, the union representing more than 9,000 Canadian border workers has set a new strike deadline.
Welcome back. Canadian border workers are prepared to strike first thing Friday morning if they do not receive a new contract. The Public Service Alliance of Canada says it's confident a strike can be avoided as mediation continues. Now, a strike was postponed last week in order for further negotiations. PSAC represents 9,000 workers with the Canada Border Services Agency. 90% of frontline border officers are designated as essential, but union members could work to rule. Similar job action 3 years ago caused major delays across the country. And Ontario is adding more beds at several correctional facilities to boost capacity to house inmates. The province says in the short term, hundreds of beds will be added to intermittent facilities in the Eglinton, Middlesex, and Toronto South detention centres. Additionally, 184 beds will be added to the new Brockville Correctional Complex and 18 more at the Quinte Detention Centre over the longer term. Up to 200 more correctional staff will be hired. The Ford government says increasing capacity will keep violent and repeat offenders off the streets. And a review is being launched into the Canadian Human Rights Commission over complaints of anti-Black racism. The Global Alliance of National Human Rights Institutions will lead the review into the CHRC. Earlier this year, multiple employees came forward with allegations of anti-Black racism, and the Commission's Human Resources Department confirmed the complaints to be valid. The review will look at Canada's A status and if it should be downgraded to B with the likes of countries like Iraq and Russia.
If Canada's A status is downgraded to B, it will lose speaking rights at the United Nations Human Rights Council, as well as voting rights and governance positions, not to mention the humiliation we will experience on the international stage.
5 years as an employee at the CHRC, I dealt with a demotion from my role at the Prime Minister's office to my junior role at the CHRC, being overlooked for promotions and asked to compete for positions when my coworkers were offered opportunities. Witnessing a disproportionate amount of denial for grievances made by Canadians on the grounds of racial discrimination, specifically anti-Black racism.
And we have a statement from the CHRC to share with you tonight that says, we fully support the accreditation process and believe that all NHRIs must be accountable for demonstrating their ongoing compliance with the Paris principles when concerns are raised by civil society. We welcome the subcommittee's special review and look forward to providing them with information about our work addressing systemic anti-Black racism within our organization as an employer, in our complaints handling function, and in our advocacy role as Canada's national human rights institution.
1 in 5 Canadians know someone who's used a food bank in the past year. The survey from Nanos Research for CTV News have found while only 2% of respondents say that they visited a food bank themselves, nearly twice as many knew of a family member who did. More than 10% say that they had a friend or acquaintance who received assistance. Respondents in BC and Atlantic Canada, those ages 35 to 54, and women, they were more likely to say they or someone they knew visited a food bank. Quebec residents and those over the age of 55 were most likely to declare that they had no connection to food bank use. And Sarah Watson is the Director of Community Engagement at North York Harvest and says that the demand for food banks is not likely to diminish anytime soon.
I mean, I don't see any reason, unfortunately, to see things changing over the next year. You know, the problem here in Toronto, it's not an issue of food, it's an issue of income. People are food insecure because they don't have enough money to afford their basic needs. So if we want to see a real shift here, what we need to see is affordable housing. We need to see decent work with stable jobs that pay a living wage. And we need to see social assistance rates that come anywhere close to meeting the cost of living. And until we see changes like that, I don't envision a change in food bank demand.
A majority of respondents in the survey say that rising food prices has actually forced them to seek out less expensive foods.
And a lot of first-time food bank users as well. That's also concerning. Time now is 5:25. We're sitting at 16 degrees. You're watching Live at 5. Coming up, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. That is tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. Stay with us.
The Oilers are looking to bounce back tonight in Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final.
Barkov 3-on-2 for the moment across the line. Barkov out in front.
The Panthers are coming off a 3-0 victory in the opener on Saturday. Edmonton outshot Florida 32-17, but could not beat 35-year-old Sergei Bobrovsky. The team that's won the opening game has gone on to win the Stanley Cup 76% of the time. Puck drop tonight is at 8 o'clock.
Right now it's 5:28, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5. Here's a live look inside the Mississauga Convention Center. This is where Carolyn Parrish and her supporters will watch the results come in tonight. There's less than 3 hours left. Less than 3 hours for Mississauga residents to cast their ballots for the next mayor. Mississauga will have a new mayor tonight. Polls close in 2.5 hours. Complete coverage continues this hour.
40 days into the pro-Palestinian encampment at the University of Toronto, and the administration says they're offering a fair proposal while protesters say it just isn't good enough.
And fire destroys historic St. Anne's Church in Little Portugal. Coming up, clergy and parishioners share memories.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latifat.
And I'm Bakari Savage. A new offer from the University of Toronto and hopes of ending a pro-Palestinian encampment. But protesters, they're flatly rejecting it, calling it unacceptable.
CP24's Steve Ryan joins us live with the latest. And you heard from these student protesters. What are they saying, Steve?
Well, Lena, they have 3 demands that they have been pretty steadfast in when it comes to timing. Now, they set up this encampment here at King's College Circle on May the 2nd, and their 3 demands were that the University of Toronto disclose its relationship with Israel, that the university divest any investments that they have in Israeli companies, and that the University of Toronto cut all ties with Israeli universities. The university has made an offer and a counter offer as well. They have offered the student organizers a seat at the table when it comes to investing in the future. And they said today that they would speed up the process of decision making when it came to any investments, but they will not cut ties with Israeli universities. So when I spoke with one of the organizers here today, she said that that was a deal breaker. If all three of those demands aren't met, they're going to continue their encampment here in the University of Toronto. Now, the police, the university police, have served a trespass notice on this group of people on May the 25th. The Toronto police have said that they will not use the authority under the Trespass of Property Act to arrest people. They're going to wait for the courts, and that court has not made a decision yet. The University of Toronto has made an application to have an injunction be submitted so that the police can then come in and remove these people that are here, but that hearing will not continue until June the 21st. Now, we did get reaction from some of the student organizers here today, and here's what we were told earlier. Let's have a listen.
In his letter, President Gertler writes, "We are growing increasingly concerned about escalations in online rhetoric and imagery, vandalism and other disruptive behavior related to the encampment." The statement was released by him yesterday, just 2 days after we held a press conference where we broke down incident after incident of the harassment that we have been facing at this encampment. The harassment that we have been facing because UFT is framing us as hateful and disruptive, something that we are not. Portraying our camp as a source of hate or disruption not only makes us less safe, but it also attracts agitators, the same agitation that UFT claims to oppose.
This deal has no guaranteed outcome. If we sign this today, there is no guarantee that we are going to get divestment, that we are going to get disclosure, and that we are going to get the cutting ties. So we cannot accept it. Today marks 247 days of this genocide and 40 days of negotiations in this encampment. And yet the University of Toronto continues to stand complicit in the murder of the friends and family of its own students.
The Ontario court, when it comes to provincial legislation, is not bound by the decisions made in other jurisdictions. But of note, the Quebec provincial court rejected McGill's University to have an injunction signed. And the courts here in Ontario now will make their own decision, but you can rest assured that they will have that decision off in their rearview mirrors as they hear this injunction, which again will resume on June 21st. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Steve Ryan, live at the University of Toronto tonight. Thank you for that, Steve.
Well, an investigation continues into a fire that destroyed a historical Anglican church in Little Portugal.
CP24's Beatrice Vaisman joins us live now with more on how that community is reacting to the loss. Beatrice.
Pure devastation, Lena. I mean, we've been hearing from people all day who have been coming to the scene there at Dundas and Gladstone to see it with their own eyes. And people are quite literally breaking down in tears because this is a place that's very dear to the community. People have very dear memories that happened inside that church. This is St. Anne's Anglican Church. We heard from a woman in the last half hour. She was married there. Some of her family members were christened or baptized there. There's been communions, there's been celebrations, and there's been service every single week there. And so people are feeling, firstly, where are they going to go? The pastor there already committing to rebuilding, finding new spaces for members of that community. But this is just absolutely devastating. And you can see right there, the roof of that church has completely caved in. The church was destroyed in this 4-alarm fire yesterday. And not only is the church of special significance, but so too was the mural inside the dome of that church, painted by several of the group of 7 painters, the murals inside that dome. And so this is a piece of history, some special artifacts that are irreplaceable that have now been destroyed in this fire. As for the investigation itself, Toronto Police saying today that it is not treating this fire as suspicious at this time, though investigators are still trying to determine what exactly caused it. It's going to be a tall task for investigators to meticulously sift through all of the debris and the rubble there to find out, firstly, where did it ignite inside the church and why. As for how the community is feeling, you'll hear first from a parishioner, and then you'll hear from a bishop who also went there today to see it for themselves and just to try to come to grips with what happened.
I really feel kind of the weight of history. I can feel the people, such an amazing family in that space. Weddings, funerals, christenings, amazing music events, thousands of people coming through the doors for various things over the years. Just so many amazing memories, and really a community of people that supports each other. So it's, I mean, that's not going anywhere, but right now it's just a lot of grieving.
Just heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking for the community that gathers here Sunday by Sunday, but also heartbreaking for the wider community and the influence that it's had in this neighborhood and beyond.
And that's something that the Reverend there really talked about as well, as he kind of shared stories of the church, that it's a gathering spot. People go there for arts and different kinds of festivities. So it's really going to be missed as a core part of that community, that the father saying they will do their best to rebuild. If the structure, the exterior walls are sound, they will rebuild the interior. But again, the murals painted by 3 members of the group of 7, the only religious artifacts known to be painted by these revered artists, they have been lost. And so as the investigation continues, a lot of people will be waiting and watching to see the outcome of it. Toronto Police have started a portal where people can submit video or photos to help police in their investigation as well. Bakari and Lena.
Okay, CP24's Beatrice Baseman. Thank you.
It's 5:38, 16 degrees. Let's get a check on that drive home now. Adjoa keeping a close eye. How's it going, Adj?
Really busy, actually, Alina. We are dealing with a problem as well. So if you're on the QEW making your way to Toronto bound, this is just past Dorval. Crews on scene of a collision block in the right lane and shoulder. Again, bit of a delay just as you make your way through. Now, if you're on the 401, eastbound continues to be pretty busy, just approaching Renforth all the way out to Dufferin. But I do have some good news. It is zooming in these collectors now. We did have a collision in the 2 right lanes. The problem's there, cleared. That's why MTO turned their camera around and keep the good news rolling. Still so on the DVP north and southbound, but on the northbound side, collision was blocking the left lane and shoulder. It also cleared. On city streets, crews on scene of a collision blocking lanes on Jarvis right at Gerrard. I'll send it back to you.
All right, traffic with Angela Ntia. Thanks a lot. It's 5:39, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5. We're going to go live to Mississauga next. This is where residents are casting their ballots today for the city's next mayor. Polls are open until 8 o'clock. Mississauga residents are choosing the city's next mayor today with less than 3 hours left until the polls close.
Yeah, let's go live to CP24's Andrew Brennan, who's at a polling station at Port Credit Memorial Arena. A lot of people saying this is not Hazel McCallion's Mississauga anymore, Andrew.
No, they're saying that this is actually really, when you think about it, Lena, the first time since 1978 when Hazel McCallion was first elected mayor of Mississauga. And also, let's also remember that was just 5 years after the city became incorporated, that this is the first time people have really felt like they do have that sense of choice. That being said, what is the choice going to be when you have 4 candidates that are polling within the statistical margins of error of each other? This has become a much more, let's just say, exciting race than was expected at the beginning of the campaign trail. Now, just talking about what we've heard from people today, you're hearing in Mississauga, this is a city that, on its own, is the 7th biggest city in Canada, even though perpetually overshadowed by being right beside Toronto. There is things that people have really near and dear to their heart, whether it's something right in their community and right in their neighborhood. Here in Port Credit, hearing a lot about speed bumps, or there's something that's a little bit more grand and also grandiose in terms of thinking about how Mississauga will be connected to the rest of the city. People talking about how much of a pain, and I know Torontonians feel this too, obviously, but the pain of commuting into the city every day. That's another big thing. There's also property taxes. There's also whether the amount of development charges can be going up and how much the city can afford and residents afford to pay on their backs when we're already dealing with inflation. Here's some of the things that people have told us as they head to the polling station.
We have a whole lot of building going on down in the Brightwater development, and there really hasn't been any talk or any discussion about how we're going to get those people in and around Port Credit and out back to the QEW, or for that matter, downtown, or any kind of mobility. And I think that's a concern.
The commute, the transit
particularly with LRT, the people who live in Port Credit particularly and in Mississauga, they are facing very hardship, and we hope that this LRT project will be done fast.
A lot of hopes, but certainly the election night may not be going all that fast tonight when you have those four candidates so close together in terms of their support in the polls leading up to polling day. We'll see what the polls for the actual voters do say later on tonight once they close at 8 p.m. Lena Bakari, will send it back to you inside.
All right, Andrew Brennan live in Port Credit for us. Thanks so much, Andrew. And CP24's Melissa Duggan is at the Mississauga Convention Center. That is where Carolyn Parrish and her supporters will be watching the results come in. She's considered a front runner, but a lot of people are saying, who knows what might happen tonight, Melissa?
A lot could be up in the air tonight. Will Carolyn Parrish be Mississauga's next mayor, or could this potentially mark the end of her career as an elected official, at least for now? Here's why. Carolyn Parrish was the councillor for Ward 5, a councillor running for mayor, a lot like a lot of the front runners that we're seeing here tonight. But the difference with Parrish is that she stepped down from her role as councillors. The other ones didn't, which means that she could devote all of her time, she said, to focusing on this race for mayor. But it also means if the other councillors lose, they still have a job. If Parrish does not win tonight, she's out of her role as an elected official. She is sounding optimistic, though. She was telling us earlier that she's feeling good going into tonight. As for the key issues that she thinks stand out for voters, here's what she has to say.
We've got to get at it right away. I just read an article this morning that puts us way behind the 8 ball without enough housing for people, and we're losing the 18 to 25-year-olds. They're leaving town, so we've got to hang on to them. So housing is absolutely essential.
Now, polling is a big story right now when it comes to this election. We saw Parrish leading the pack by nearly doubling the second closest competitor. But that lead sure did shrink. One poll has her just 1 point ahead. It's going to be interesting to see just how accurate that polling is when we learn the final results tonight. We're certainly going to be paying very close attention to that here at Carolyn Parrish's election headquarters at Mississauga Convention Center. Back to you.
All right, CP24's Melissa Duggan. We're going to be checking in with you throughout the evening. We also caught up with some of the other leading candidates in the race today about how they're feeling heading into tonight.
I've always said, listen, whether it's a speed bump on your street, whether it's removing lanes off Bloor Street, whether it's wholesale change of zoning in the city, I've always said we need to talk to the residents first. I've demonstrated I'm willing to stand up for you. I've demonstrated that I don't think I know best. So there's a number of candidates, you can choose from, but I can tell you my story. My story is demonstrated repeatedly that your voice matters. So I'm asking you to trust me and vote for me, and I will hold that sacred trust that your voice will matter.
I'm very cautiously optimistic. I think we've identified all the voters that we need in order to win this election. We just need them to show up. We know that young people under 50 are particularly engaged right now. Our plan for seniors is really encouraging them to come out and vote so that they can continue living in this city. So, my kids will be there. My wife and I are voting now, and, I think everyone's really excited. So we're cautiously optimistic.
Nothing's ever a given until the polls close, and I'll tell you what we've been hearing is very, very consistent. We've had a huge upward trajectory. The momentum is there, the excitement's there, and everybody wants to hear a good message. People don't want to hear negativity. They don't want to hear about a career politician. They don't want to have anybody that's not going to show up for the job, and that's me. I'm proven, I'm tested, I show up, I represent, and I want to be a mayor for everybody in Mississauga to build the most incredible city in the world.
And CP24 will have special coverage beginning at 8 o'clock tonight. That is when polls in Mississauga close. It could be a really exciting evening. Join us for the latest results and political reaction.
Right now it's 5:48, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5. And coming up, we're learning new details about the tentative deal reached with the Union for TTC workers. Stay with us. The union, representing thousands of frontline TTC workers, is releasing terms of the framework it reached to avoid a strike last week. ATU Local 113 says that the contract proposal includes a more than 13% wage increase over 3 years. The union says that it also comes with protections against contracting out and improved benefits. The tentative agreement was struck last Thursday, shortly before the deadline for a strike that would have seen more than 11,000 TTC employees walk off the job and snarl transit service. And Mayor Olivia Chow spoke with CP24 today and says that she's relieved that the union and TTC were able to avoid a strike.
I was in the Due West Festival on the weekend, on Saturday and Sunday. So many people came up and say, thank God, TTC. And now they keep saying, is the deal on? Is it okay? I said, yes, it'll be fine. Don't worry.
And the proposal still has to be ratified.
A heads up now for subway riders. There is an early closure on Line 1 this week. Service between St. Clair and Shepherd Young will end at 11 p.m. beginning tonight until Friday. It is for planned track work. Shuttle buses will be operating. Regular service resumes daily at 6 a.m. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has presented her controversial capital gains proposal to Parliament, setting the stage for a key vote.
Taxing capital gains is not an inherently partisan idea. It's an idea that everyone who cares about fairness should support.
The Liberals want to hike the inclusion rate on capital gains from 50% to 67% for people who make more than $250,000 in profits in a single year from capital income, like the sale of secondary properties or stock options. There's been a lot of criticism, a lot of pushback. This is a standalone motion as Freeland forces the Conservatives to vote in favor of raising taxes or risk being tagged as the party of millionaires if they vote against it.
Right now, it's 5:53, 16 degrees. This is Live at 5, and coming up, we're going to talk to CTV political commentator Scott Reed about the Mississauga mayoral race. Stay with us. If you're a Mississauga resident, you are running out of time to cast your ballot in the mayoral by-election.
Polls close in about 2 hours, and there's lots of reasons to get out there and vote. Some are saying it could be a really tight race. For the latest, we're joined live by Scott Reed, CTV's political commentator. Always good to be with you, Scott. Look, I've always been told the only poll that matters is the one on Election Day. So it's Election Day in Mississauga. What do you think is going to happen?
I think the last poll mattered a lot because the last poll told us that this boring race that was supposed to be a walkaway for Carolyn Parrish is actually a super exciting three-way tie that's too close to call. Now, we'll see if that turns out to be true. Maybe Carolyn Parrish will still win by a landslide, but if the polls are to be believed, this thing is a knife fight, and it falls in an off year. As we know, this is a special election, which means voter turnout's going to be critical. Who can get their vote out? How motivated are people? Will they bother to vote tonight?
Right.
Really exciting.
And then, Scott, there's the undecided vote.
Well, and you're always going to get a huge undecided vote in a municipal election because most people aren't paying that close of an attention. Look, Bonnie Crombie was the mayor for 60 years, and then before Hazel McCallion was the mayor for 130 years or something, right? So, like, this is the first time people feel like they've had a choice in a long time, maybe, and we are going to see whether or not people are paying close attention. If the polls are to be believed, they are, because something's eating into that big lead that Carolyn Parrish had. People are paying attention and changing their vote.
You know, polls, Scott, can really galvanize people, especially when the numbers are this close. Do you think a lot of people looked at these nail-biting results and thought, okay, that's why I'm going to get out there to vote today? Do you think that motivated people to go out there today?
Oh, I hope so. Here's the number to watch for, 22. 22 was what we had as a voter turnout in 2022. Now, that's a gruesomely low number. But this is a municipal election. This is a special election. It's happening in June. You know, people are busing their kids back and forth to baseball and soccer, so we'll see. But if you can get above that 22%, then it tells you that the polls did motivate people. It tells you that when the campaigns call and say, listen, your vote matters and every vote counts, that people said, yeah, you know what? Because when you got a big front runner, people say, well, I can't even be bothered, whatever. I got to pick up groceries. But if the polls, again, are to be believed, then it's a huge tool for campaigns to say, please make time to vote.
Yeah.
And along with that, Scott, we're going to be talking with you throughout the evening. How long do you think it'll take before a decision is actually made?
Not long. I think we're going to know like 25 minutes after. I'm making a silly prediction. I think we're going to see pretty quickly. You know, they count these votes fast, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting. I mean, if we got a three-way race, watch Alvin Tejo. You know, he's campaigning on cutting taxes. That'll be interesting.
We got to leave it there,
taxes.
Scott. But we're going to be talking to you tonight as part of our special coverage, so we'll chat soon. You're watching Toronto's Breaking News, CP24. Mississauga will have a new mayor tonight. Stay with us as our special coverage continues. Thanks for watching.